Hi, and welcome to another edition of Labor Vision Podcast. I'm your host, James Dennis. American Workers First and Labor Vision present the 2020 Vision for Labor. The goal is to engage, educate, and energize. I'm with my co-host, Charles Daniels, president of CWA 4123. Hey, Charles, what's happening?
That is me. Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Hey, great. And Charles, who do we have here? Who are we blessed to be with today?
We have a very special guest. This is the president of the Huron Valley AFL-CIO, Ian Robinson. He is an extremely active president. He is all over the place. This guy, I don't know where he rests, because if there's a picket line or a need for labor, he's going to be there. So really happy to have him. Excited to hear what he has to say.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Ann Arbor, one of my favorite places in Michigan. I love the flair of Ann Arbor. I mean, I'm a Detroiter, but I still love the flair of Ann Arbor. So it's a great place, great place. Welcome to the podcast. And welcome to American Workers First. Good stuff coming out today. So what we got?
Well, I think Ian was going to talk about the One University program, and I think he said some other things that he was going to go over. So the world's your oyster, man.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, I thought, yes, in addition to being president of Huron Valley, I'm the president of LEO, the Lecture Employees Organization, which is the non-tenure track faculty at the University of Michigan. Okay. All three campuses we represent. And one of the things that came out of collective bargaining a couple of years ago was that there's a huge gap between the minimum amount of pay that our members get in Flint and Dearborn versus Ann Arbor. So we have a responsibility to set our members on a more equal footing. They also teach a higher teaching load if they're full-time in those two, Flint and Dearborn, relative to Ann Arbor. So we began to work on that. It was clear we couldn't get that resolved entirely before the round of bargaining came to an end, but we said we're not going to start another round of bargaining without having worked on this issue. And as we looked more closely at it, we realized it isn't just our members. In fact, our members are kind of a microcosm of a larger inequality that exists between the three campuses. And it affects the students, everybody, in fact, more than it affects our members, I would say. So, for example, in the last couple of years, if you were a student from Michigan and your family income was less than $65,000 a year, you met the basic requirements of entry in terms of grade, point average, and so on, then you could be admitted to the University of Michigan without tuition. You still had to cover room and board, but that tuition was taken care of.
Wow.
So that really helps, right? With your talking about students that are graduating with a lot of debt, you don't have to deal with that aspect of where that debt is coming from.
Wow.
But that was only applied to Ann Arbor.
Whoa, wait.
Yeah.
That was only applied to Ann Arbor?
Yes. And when you read it...
So if I was in Flint,
yes,
which was very easy for somebody to not make $65,000 a year,
yes,
everything else matches up, they weren't even offered the free tuition?
That is exactly right.
The folks that you would really say probably would need it the most, as I guess per capita Ann Arbor probably has a higher demographic of higher incomes.
I need a boo button on this thing. I'm going to have to go give me a boo button.
You're exactly right. I mean, we did some calculations, and it looked like about 15% of the students that were currently on the Ann Arbor campus would have come from families of $65,000 or below. In Flint and Dearborn, it looked more like 40%. So you could have a huge, huge impact on those campuses by eliminating that source of debt on the students. You could allow them to focus more on their studies instead of having to do part-time or in some cases even full-time work while they were trying to do their studies. You could have them graduating out of there with less student debt. Still, they might incur some debt because of room and board and other issues, but it would be a lot better for them. And so for all those reasons, and another reason that's relevant both to students and even more to our members and the campuses is that Flint has been losing students. There are fewer students enrolling, and that means number of classes offered are shrinking, and that means it's harder to find the combination of classes you need to get your major, and that means it slows down how long it takes you to graduate and makes it less likely you will graduate. So imagine if a whole lot of Michigan students could start coming to Flint and Dearborn without tuition, how many more people would apply? We wouldn't be having these falling enrollments in Flint and Dearborn if we adopted this policy.
Wow.
So that's only one of the inequalities. Another one is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our president, Schlissel, when he came into office 5 years ago, allocated $85 million over a 5-year period to support programs in every school, and it was mandated that every school needed to develop them to help advance these values, which we very much support. Sure. But there was no money for Flint and Dearborn to do that, even though the student body in Flint and Dearborn is much more diverse. There are far more both working class and people of color in the Flint and Dearborn campuses, and a lot of the faculty are white. So there's a lot of issues where both the students and the faculty need to, but especially from our point of view as an organization, a union of faculty, we need our faculty to be well-trained and to have resources and support to better interact with a student body that's very diverse.
So wait a minute. Dearborn has what, the highest concentrated amount of Mideastern citizens, right? People from the Mideast.
Yep.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
And that's one of the places this.
Which is one of the great things about the labor movement as a whole is it's a constant push for equality, because there are people that believe that we've reached a point where it's no longer an issue anymore, that we've met that criteria. And it's wrong. It's a misnomer. You're
this right here.
Exactly.
I mean, come on,
it's
man.
sitting right in front of
Flint,
you.
Dearborn.
Right.
And I mean, you can't even. Oh, man.
And we call it the One University campaign because we have one president, not 3. We have one board of regents, 8 elected regents, 7 out of 8 of whom are Democrats, not 3. So we are one university at the level of our top decision makers, the people who set the priorities, the people who decide what is the public mission of our great university. And it needs to be, but when it comes to budget and support for the students and the faculty on these 3 campuses, it's 3 universities because they're supposed to sit on separate silos. Each one is supposed to be completely self-funding. And that's kind of like what we do with K-12, where we say, well, rich neighborhoods, you draw on your tax base.
I was thinking the same thing when you said that.
Yeah.
The school, really, in real talk, all our schools should
it.
be exactly the same across the board, no matter what neighborhood you live in.
Yes.
But it's not.
Right.
That was the purpose of public schools, is so that it wasn't just the affluent kids that were getting an education. It was for those farm kids to actually get there. Because there was a time in America when there were no public schools, and we decided, no, that's a bad idea. To have an educated populace
a bad idea.
Helps us. And now that has to extend to college as well, because the way that you keep up is by innovating. And when you're falling behind in those areas, you begin to fall behind as a country.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
A more educated country is a better country.
100%. Knowledge is power. And Michigan is a fantastic school, just a fantastic school, but it's a state school and they have responsibilities. And if you have a program like that, I can only imagine the genesis of when they created it was to help the people that needed it the most. Right. So to then exclude the people that need it the most is just contrary. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. It's losing the vision of what we were created to achieve in the first place and thinking that we are kind of operating like a private university that's in competition with Yale and Harvard for whatever kind of prestige they have, And, we have a different mission. And I think I want to say that I want to acknowledge that some of our regents have been really strong in supporting us changing this direction. It's the president that we need to really focus the pressure on. He has been very resistant to this. The chancellors, which he picks and puts in place, have also, until very recently, resisted this.
Why is he so resistant to this?
Well, it's a good question. And, one thing that he'll say about the Go Blue guarantee, for example, is that, and he has said this publicly, that in Ann Arbor, we did not have a lot of people from working class families. So having a sort of support that would attract a higher number made sense, whereas Flint and Dearborn already have a very high percentage of their students who come from working class backgrounds, and therefore there's no need to support, to attract more of them. So it's kind of a diversity argument of a sort, rather than a justice argument about the fundamental mission of the
I don't like where this is going.
Too many needy poor people in those areas.
I don't like where this is going. No. So you realize that if I come from a poor family and I go get a good college education, and then I raise the standard of my living, right? I raise the standard of my children's living. They do better than I do. It's less people coming from poor communities because each generation gets better and better. Isn't that the whole thought of college? Isn't that what that's supposed to be all about?
Isn't that what? It's the first building block is having an education that you can fall back on to get a good job to improve your life. And there's a ripple effect. It keeps going.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So wouldn't you, what do we want poor? Let me ask something. Do we want poor neighborhoods? Do we want everybody to, hey, let's have a group of poor people? Are we just cool with that? Yeah. I want everybody to have a Lamborghini.
We're not cool with that.
No. I want everybody to have a Lamborghini. Seriously. I want to be able to come over to your house and say, hey, man, my Lamborghini was smoking yesterday. Mine was too. You know what I mean?
As long as it's union made, brother.
Well, yeah. It's got to be union made.
But it's important because I don't think many people really understand that this is even happening. It's a very esoteric situation that affects people in a smaller way. So it's good to actually get on and talk about it, because that's the way you solve the problem, is you shed light on it. And probably the most powerful motivator for someone who's in a position like that is shame. So shame on you. This is wrong. Fix it, and fix it fast.
Yeah.
Exactly. Boo this man.
Yeah, I need boo though. I gotta figure out. I gotta go find me a boo.
I mean, there's even more to it than that. Ian, we were talking earlier, and when it comes to some of the perks or the things that are given as far as the legal wise, they're available in Ann Arbor, but then not at the Flint and Dearborn locations. Is that correct?
Right. There was, I took it for granted that our students had access to a health clinic on Ann Arbor campus. That at least would be common to all three, but it's not either. There is no sort of, it's called UMHS, University of Michigan Health Services, on our Ann Arbor campus. There is no equivalent in Flint and Dearborn. Students were recently told, after the 1U campaign put pressure on this and raised this consciousness about this inequality, that, well, now if they're willing to pay a certain amount of money, they can go down to the U of M Health Clinic in Ann Arbor.
Whoa, wait, hold on. I was just getting ready to ask that question, so hold on. All the campuses, it's one campus, right? It's supposed to be that one campus,
one university
thing, right? One university.
One university, three campus, or four.
So why can't I, from Flint, go to Ann Arbor to the clinic?
Well, now you can. It wasn't even a possibility until we...
No. That shouldn't even be optional.
Yeah.
You got to drive an hour to get there.
Right, I'm driving an hour to get there, but the thing is, if I go there, you should service me.
Yeah, and now they can't, but they have to pay, because their argument is, well, in Ann Arbor, the students pay out of their student special student fees that support student government and other things.
Okay,
also,
whoa. Are those fees? Oh, so Flint don't pay those fees?
Not into the
Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor.
No. They don't pay the fees.
Right.
So you're telling me they pay fees, it's not to Ann Arbor, which is the reason why they don't want them going to their hospital.
To their clinic.
Yeah, their clinic. That's right. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
To their clinic. So wait a minute, but they're the same fees. So I got to pay it. It ain't like Flint is cheaper.
I'm not sure. I'd tell you the truth. It might be
in other words, I'm still paying fees. That's what I'm getting at.
Yes, you are.
I'm still paying fees, and I'm not getting the same services as everybody else.
Yeah. And that's true of a legal clinic as well, which students sometimes use for landlord-tenant disputes and other things of that kind. It's true of support for international studies abroad, which can be very enriching, and which a lot of Flint and Dearborn students would like to be able to do. They apply and then they withdraw because they realize they can't really raise up the amount of money that's required, plus forego the earned income that it takes when you're away for a month or something like that in another country. So it becomes prohibitive, even though a relatively small amount of money could really make it possible for them. So there's a long list, actually. And honestly, some of our members were aware of this piece or that piece, but it wasn't until we really began working on, what are the nature of inequality between these three campuses that's generated by this campus budget silo model that they're so keen to defend, that we pulled it all together and realized this is systemic. Right? This is like across a whole number of issues, and cumulatively the effect of these inequalities is much greater than any one of them would be if it was on its own.
Right.
So, yeah. And I just want to say this too, that we have so much money at the University of Michigan because tuition is high relative to other public universities, and the lineup for the Ann Arbor campus is long. So they can and they have every year raised tuition. More money comes in, and they don't have any drop off in demand. And so the year we were bargaining, we looked carefully at the annual statement from the previous year, 2017, and it turned out we had a surplus of income from the state government, tuition dollars, research grant overhead, and some earnings from the endowment, that was over $500 million. And the kind of money we're talking about to do the things that need to be done in Flint and Dearborn to put students on an equal footing in these areas we've talked about and a couple of others is probably on the order of $10 million per campus. So think about what a fraction 10 million is of 500 million. 500. It's a little lower this year, but it's still above 300 million in the last year for which we have a report. So this is not a heavy burden for the central administration, for Ann Arbor to take a little bit of that money and use it where it would be have a much greater impact in Flint and Dearborn than it would have as an increment to Ann Arbor.
Wow.
It's crazy not to use it that way. It makes no sense from any kind of fairness model or even from an efficiency model where you ask the question, what would be the greatest bang for an extra buck spent?
Right.
The impact it would have of a positive kind on students would be so much greater in Flint and Dearborn than an extra 10 million would be in Ann Arbor.
And with Ann Arbor, you're talking about a school that's supposed to be enlightened. That's supposed to be a woke school where you understand these social issues and how important these kind of things are. So when it can happen in a school in like Ann Arbor, well, the trickle down from that is it can happen in these other areas. You have to lead by example. So if you want to be the leaders and the best, you better conduct yourselves like the leaders and the best.
Absolutely. And not every public university has the kind of resources we do, and we have to be honest about that.
Right.
But there's absolutely no reason why we can't, given that we have this wealth of resources, share it with the other two campuses that are part of our same university. And also we should be fighting for higher state support for higher education.
Right, I agree.
I didn't talk about this, but one of the other things we discovered when we started doing the research for the One U campaign, and I should say this is a student campaign, it's not just Leo, it's also Graduate Student Union, it's also students on all three campuses have formed independent student organizations that are pushing for this. So
Good.
I would say that it's a student supported and led organization effort as much as it is ours. But the state government is paying twice as much per student, per full-time student, because you have to control for the fact that there's a lot more part-time students in Flint and Dearborn than in Ann Arbor, because the students are having to work so many more hours in order to pay their tuition and just meet their other responsibilities and live. So anyway, that needs to change too. Why should it be that the students from the wealthiest families at the best resourced public university get twice as much per student from the state? That makes no sense. And the same deal applies to other public universities beyond the University of Michigan.
Right.
So we have work to do in Lansing as well. But we thought with 7 out of 8 Democratic regions, we ought to be able to make progress on this issue and make it quickly. And we are making progress, not as quickly as we would like, but we are not stopping. We're going to continue until we win this campaign in these areas.
Well, we got a good governor, so we're good. I mean, I had to just throw that out there. So you got a friend in the White in the governor's house. I was going to say White House.
It definitely helps. I don't know if you want to talk about a different issue or.
Oh yeah, Ian, whatever you got there.
I think that we've kind of covered some of the most important pieces of One U, but we are also working at Huron Valley to try to build kind of a stronger level of solidarity amongst our local unions. Like we have 50 affiliates. They represent about 20,000 members among themselves. And, I think that our labor movement's at a very sort of critical moment now. We have been dealing with 40 years of being on the defensive, really, in the face of a corporate agenda that just kept getting drilled down and drilled down and drilled down. And CWA, as much as any union, knows what the cost of that is in terms of lost membership.
Certainly.
To offshoring of the facilities that we're doing.
Closed down call centers. Work.
And so so many unions.
Yeah, we done lost a lot of call centers.
Yeah.
I mean, Charles, you lost, 3?
Goodness, I mean, we lost one at the start of last year, our Kalamazoo call center, and that was very difficult. And these call centers, they've been depleted to the point that when they actually get closed down, it's 50, 75, 100 people that are affected.
Yeah,
but if you look at the history of it, at one point, there were 600, 700,
Right.
there could be 1,000 people in an office, and they've shrunken them down so much to the point that they're dying with a whimper because there's just so few people left in those positions because you're incentivized as a corporation to send that work offshore. It's easier to send them to India and to train folks over there because the corporate tax rates are lower on a lot of the gains that are made for offshore profits, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Then these corporations will take those profits, filter them into a country like Ireland or the Netherlands, where the corporate tax rate is even lower, to get the number down to a point where it's impossible for an American to compete with that kind of job where you're paying them $2 an hour and you're getting money on the back end when it comes to the taxes. So I don't know how as Americans we've allowed that to happen, where we've essentially let the government get rid of our own jobs. It makes no sense. And these are companies that get federal contracts. That's our money right there. That's going to corporations that are getting rid of our jobs. It makes no sense. Everyone should be against this. It's not a partisan issue.
Well, you know what? The other piece of that is, and all of that you said was very important, but here's the other thing. Our credit is in danger when it goes overseas. Remember, all your personal information.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, you got people that are going there, stick a thumb drive in, download 250,000 people's credit, social security number, their address, their driver's license number, and sell it on the black market. Now that it's sold, you're like, well, we should prosecute those people. They're in another country. So whatever laws that they abide by there, they're not the laws that we abide by. So the security is safer when the call centers are here in the United States. When they go overseas, your credit, all that is in danger.
Yes, and I've yet to meet a person who likes the fact when they're calling about the service that they have here in the United States in Michigan that they get connected to someone overseas who they can have problems understanding, they can have problems addressing their issues.
That's point number 3.
They get transferred around a ton of times, and ultimately they finally end up back with one of our folks, and they're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube because they're so irate at this point as of what had happened. But it's gotten to the point where it's like you can just leave and go somewhere else because all these companies have bought each other up again to the point that they've really become monopolies again. So you really have such limited choices as to who you're going to get your internet, who you're going to get your phone from, because they're all doing the exact same thing.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So where I'm going with that is that we have been implementing policies, rigging the economy in a direction that has those kinds of effects, taking a larger and larger share of the gains from our economic growth and increases in productivity and handing them to the 1%, taking them out of the pockets of everyone else, including our members. And so we're at a moment now where I think the chickens have come home to roost for the corporate agenda. More and more people are supporting policies well to the left in terms of taxation, in terms of public support for Medicare for all, and all of these policies that would substantially help our members and the 90% of American workers who aren't lucky enough to be in unions.
Right.
They're well to the left of where the so-called centrists or the so-called moderates of the Democratic Party are, never mind the Republican Party.
Right.
And so at the national level in the Democratic primaries, we're seeing the fight happen where there's now a couple of powerful champions of policies that will actually have the effect of unrigging the economy from the way the corporate agenda rigged it and resetting it in a way that says everybody's going to benefit from this. It's not that the rich will suddenly lose all their money, but they will, if we do it right, lose their political power, because that's not right. There should be a watertight compartment between whatever money you have and whatever inequality of income and wealth we think is tolerable in a democratic society, and the political structures. Right now, there's no compartment at all. It's like totally awash with money, dark money, right? Especially since Citizens United.
Exactly.
So I think we're at a moment nationally where we can, if we work hard and get our members into action and get other working people into action beside us around a larger vision of a just economy, we can start to make the changes that will really restructure this and get rid of the kinds of things that you were just talking about. I think that we can do that at the national level, but we have to do it all the way down to the local level also.
Right. Absolutely.
And, that's where holding a public institution like the University of Michigan with elected leadership like the regents accountable is super important, because at every level we need to be holding governments and elected officials accountable for the impact of their policies. You're either for working people or you're continuing down the neoliberal road that got us to the place where we are now. And we shouldn't be supporting. We should be finding people to run against anybody, whether they call themselves a Democrat or Republican, who is pushing for policies that are going to privatize currently public services, are going to deregulate or in the case of Lansing, stop local governments from being able to pass minimum wages and the kinds of things that we need to be able to do locally where we're stronger.
So, got a question for you. What is your 2020 vision for labor?
My 2020 vision for labor is that we take advantage of the historic opportunity that we have right now to start ourselves on a new trajectory where we say this is the end of the corporate agenda, this is the end of the neoliberal era, 40 years from the mid-70s on, 50 years maybe, and we say this is when we begin to rebuild an economy that works for all Americans and all people, because we project our power into the world. We've reproduced the kind of inequality in the United States around the world by our use of trade policy and the power that we have because people want to be able to get their exports into this country to leverage their governments into adopting policies that hurt most of their people. So this is the moment because of the balance of political forces, because people are fed up and they understand that the political system is corrupt. They understand that the economic system is rigged, and we can take this moment and turn it into a gigantic opportunity if we get our people educated and mobilized, organized and mobilized. And I think that's our task for 2020. And if we do it, we can say that we did our responsibility as good labor leaders to turn this country around. When we've made great progress in this country, it's been because of social movements. It's because of the labor movement in the 1930s right here in this state with the UAW and the CIO. In the civil rights era, it's been because of the civil rights era. Women, the environment, we are the sources of change. And this time around, I believe we need to work all of those social movements together, because when we look at who are our enemies, who are the people that are dismantling environmental regulations, who are the people that are pushing back against women's rights, who are the people that are rolling back voting rights and making people lose in governor races in southern states what they should have won, who are the people that are taking the money out of the pockets of our members and other working people that aren't in unions and putting in the pockets of the 1%, the people who need it least. It is always the same group.
My man,
Absolutely.
That was fantastic. We love your vision of labor. 2020 vision of labor. Well, I think that's another podcast knocked out. Remember, new podcast and YouTube video will be every Friday. Please remember to subscribe, share, and like.
Yes, sir.
And I guess that is another episode. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. American Workers First Labor Vision Podcast. Peace out.